Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After running through the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. On today's show, we have a ton of to talk about. I hope I get across my points as clear as I possibly can. I don't think I'm going to be able to fit everything into the show. There's so much to talk about, so many topics. We just won a game on Sunday, and to have this news on Monday is insane. It's devastating news as a fan. It breaks my heart because Coach Flores was one of my favorite coaches. Just the way he carried himself, the way he ran his defense, his aggressive style, everything about it is just the way I would want my team to play football. And to lose that because of politics and stuff that doesn't relate to winning football games is very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate, which leads us into our first news story. This news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Miami Dolphins have fired 3-year head coach Brian Flores. And I want to say this before I continue. If you guys hear the snoring in the background, those are pugs. Those are not human beings. Those are pugs. Hopefully it's not too distracting. They are kind of loud. Anyway, getting into this Brian Flores news. I've been covering this team for a long time. I've been doing it for 5 years. It's one of my favorite things to do on a weekly basis is making these podcasts. I do it obviously the love of the team. I love this team to death. I've invested a lot of time in this team. I love the game of football, and this is my team that plays that game. And to hear it just to watch our franchise kind of just disintegrate and just get worse, it just breaks your heart. It breaks your heart. I don't know what else to really say about this. It's devastating. Brian was the second, achieved a lot of things a lot of coaches couldn't. Back-to-back winning seasons, which hasn't been done in 20 years. Was 4-2 against the greatest head coach in the history of football. But beat the Patriots in Gillette at the time that hadn't been done in over 10, I think exactly 10 years and over 10 years. No, actually it was 11 years. Maybe it was 12. I think what did we do that in 20? No, it was 2019, so it was 11 years. Had a winning record in my eyes, because I'm not going to count that first year because he had to deal with a turd of a roster that was pooped out by Adam Gase. So I'm going to blame that on Adam Gase, not Brian Flores. And was a fantastic head coach. I just loved everything about him. And for him to be fired like this by this clown show that is Chris Grier and Stephen Ross is disgraceful. And the reasons behind it are even more mind-boggling. And it's ridiculous. Like, one of the things that really made me mad is just the message that they're going to send the rest of the coach. Like, who's going to want to coach here? Reportedly, this was a power play. It was going to be either Chris Grier and Brian Flores, and they chose Chris Grier. That's what NFL Network reported. And if you've been watching any national media, that's what they've been saying. So what was Stephen Ross saying, that you have to be a puppet for Chris Grier? And one of the other things, and who the heck wants to be a puppet for Chris Grier out of all people? One of the other things that Brian Flores gets crapped on for is that his offense hasn't been great. Well, the main reason for that is because the lack of talent on that offense has been not good at all. Like, at all. So Chris Grier should get the blame for that. When you look at the people he's fired on his offensive coaching staff, they deserve to be fired. Okay? Chad O'Shea. Nobody liked him in the locker room. That was well documented. Nobody on the offense liked him at all. Even Mike Gesicki, who seems like a very nice person, was happy to see him go. And publicly said so. Chan Gailey. Chan Gailey was not good for Tua. He was too old and really never had to develop a young quarterback. And obviously those two never, especially the way he called plays with him, it just wasn't right for his development. That's why they fired him. And then we got to George Godsey, who, to be honest with you, I thought did a fantastic job with the offense and finding an identity out of just this crap show that was the offense. I thought he did a fantastic job. And obviously he's gone now. So Tua's going to have 3 different offensive coordinators since he's been in the NFL, which is ridiculous. So when you want to talk about consistency and winning, what the heck does Stephen Ross know about that? Because look at all the turnover he's been a part of. It doesn't make a lot of sense. There is no other reason for Brian Flores to be fired other than because of politics. That's it. And for the dumbest reasons ever. There's no reason he should have been fired at all. Like I said, all of those offensive coordinators had reasons to be fired, and good ones. I can't believe even people are even defending Chan Gailey. I mean, Dolphins fans were all over Chan Gailey last year and hated him. And now that for some reason people that are pro Flores being fired use that against him. It's like, what kind of weird world do we live in? Okay? And like again, it doesn't set a good precedent at all for anybody who wants to coach here. Who wants to coach here? So when Chris Greer whines and cries because you don't agree with Chris Greer on something, he gets his way? That's what you guys want to deal with. You want to deal with an owner who clearly is overly emotional and has no idea what he's doing. And for some reason, Chris Greer has the ear of the owner. Like, what happened, dude? What happened, man? It's like living in a nightmare. It doesn't seem real. That's how crazy it is. You can't make sense of something that doesn't make sense. And that's what this is. It just doesn't make sense. Here's what I can make sense of. That this organization is being ran by legitimate circus clowns. Okay? Another thing that was said on the press conference by Stephen Ross that I thought was an absolute slap in the face. He might as well have spit on every Dolphins fan out there. This was a disgusting comment, and I'm surprised nobody else called him out on it in the press conference. It was so crazy that I couldn't believe it when I heard it. When he said, "I won't be the one to take Harbaugh from Michigan," basically what he just said to every Dolphins fan is he has more of an investment and cares more about what happens to the Michigan Wolverines than what he does about this fan base and this organization that he owns. He cares more about the outcome of the Michigan Wolverines than he does the Miami Dolphins. That's what that means to me. You won't do something that's in the best interest of this franchise because you like the Michigan Wolverines. I mean, what the heck does that... What? That blew my mind when he said that. Blew my mind. And you know what else is disgusting? Is the whole Chris Greer dynamic about this. Chris Greer is a GM, and it's been well documented, especially on this show, and over the years I've been covering this team, of all Chris Greer's mistakes. We know every Chris Greer mistake. I don't have to recount those, right? Chris Greer doesn't make decisions on the football field. Does he affect the winning and the outcome? Yes, he picks the players. But he has nothing to do with the day-to-day activities and day-to-day of anything of what it takes to win on Sundays. He has nothing to do with that. And somehow, it just doesn't make sense to me why Chris... It blows my mind. It's like, how did Chris Greer get out of this? How? Like, how? And it's unfortunate. It really is. I God bless Coach Flo. I hope he goes and finds somewhere where it's not ran like go somewhere where it's not ran this way. And again, I just don't know who is going to want to come here and coach after that. After this story came out, I wouldn't want to coach here. I don't know. I would have felt 1,000 times better if this wasn't a power play thing, if this wasn't a politic thing. If Chris Greer got fired, I definitely would have felt better about it. But the fact that Brian gets fired and not Chris just makes me even more sick to my stomach. It's hard, man. It's hard being a Dolphins fan. And I think that's what everybody's feeling right now. It just is. It really is, man. And it just got even that much harder to know that these guys are the ones making the decisions. These guys are the ones making the decisions. I just named off all the achievements. He's 4-2 against the greatest head coach of all time. He's the first coach to sweep New England in over 20 years. If I'm not mistaken about that. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think I am. He's the first coach, I think I already just said this, but I'll say it again, to have a back-to-back winning season since 2002. And he got fired because of it. And another point I want to bring up about this whole thing. Everybody said when he was hired here that this was a 4 to 5 year rebuild. Did they not? And Stephen Ross said we have to have patience. We have to build through the draft. Well, who doesn't have patience now? Because he's been here 3 years. He's really only had a good chance to win games for the last 2 years. He won 10 games in 9 games. And sported a fantastic defense, by the way. One of the most fun units to watch, one of the most unique schemes in the National Football League. A scheme that was feared around the league. Okay? You got rid of a coach that was respected around the league by his peers. That's what you fired. So we're going to fire him. Why are we firing him? Why did they fire Brian Flores? They still haven't given a straight answer on that. Because of collaborativeness? With who? With Chris Grier? I would disagree with Chris Grier too if I was Brian Flores. Brian Flores knows more about football than Chris Grier does. I think we can all admit to that. I think we could all agree to that. And Stephen Ross, who's the owner who makes the final say, can't come to this conclusion and can't make that decision that would have been better for the franchise. If they can't get along, then fire Chris Grier. And that's what makes me most upset, is that guy's making the decisions. It sucks, man. It sucks, dude. It just sucks, man. I don't know what else to say about it. I just don't know how you fire that guy. And like I said, the plan was 5 years built through the draft. This is a rebuild. We want consistent stability. He said it constantly, Stephen Ross. We want consistency. We want stability. We want, winning over a long span of time. You don't do that. This is not the behavior of an organization that achieves that. Look at the NFL. Look at the history of the league. This guy clearly has zero knowledge about football. It's almost like he goes to his house in New York and doesn't even pay attention to the offseason. He just signs checks. That's what Stephen Ross does. He just signs checks. Look at the history of the league. What owner has had success this way by treating their head coaches like this and treating their organization like this? No one did. No one did. Brian Flores is the first head coach to have a 7-game win streak in a season and be fired. What other head coach is 4-2 against Bill Belichick and has been fired? When has that ever happened? And I love Dolphins fans turning their nose up at Brian Flores for the back-to-back winning season. You guys haven't seen that in over 20 years. What else did you want to see in the first 3 years of Brian Flores? If I told you he's going to win 10 games in his second year, he's going to win 9, he's going to go 9-8 in his third year, and tell you all of the great players that we assembled on the defensive side of the football and how we were going in the right direction. It's like, what happened to this whole 4-year thing anyway? And now he's fired after 3. It just makes no sense. It really doesn't. I don't know. I just don't know what he did. I just don't know what he did. And it sucks. It sucks to see that we're not going to watch that defense. A Dolphins fan said something interesting to me today where they said every time we lined up in that blitz, you knew something special could happen. And we haven't had that. And when people want to compare records to other coaches, Joe Philbin and Adam Gase never had an elite side of a unit. They never had an elite offense. They never had an elite defense. Neither one of the two had that. Not once. Brian Flores had an elite defense. A defense that was feared and a scheme that was feared. The reason the Dolphins lost games is because of their offense. It's just a slap in the face, man. The whole thing is just like, it's just a dumpster fire. And the fact that Stephen Ross can look at the fan base in the eye and say, I'm not going to go after a head coach that's really good at his job after just firing a really good head coach because I want him to coach my favorite college football team, is disgusting, dude. Then don't own our team. Go to Michigan. Sell the team and go to Michigan and watch Wolverine games on Saturdays. Don't worry about what the Dolphins do on Sundays anymore. And again, the last thing I want to say is, and I think the thing that's, if we polled every Dolphins fan and we're like, who would you rather have, Chris Grier or Brian Flores? And the fact that Stephen Ross can't differentiate, I just butchered that word, the difference between those two, and make a rational decision on who should lead the franchise for the next few years and who should have the power within the organization, it blows my mind. It blows my mind. So let's move on from this and get into that, because we have tons of questions to answer. I don't even feel like talking about the win on Sunday because of this whole situation. It makes me sick. The dude just beat the Patriots. Literally just beat the Patriots at Hard Rock Stadium. And he was fired the next day, man. And he had a winning record. You know what's really takes me off is after he was fired and like everybody's like, how everybody's lining up to, he's gonna have, all these franchises obviously want him as their head coach, and rightfully so. I mean, what he's been able to do, is not normal, to say the least. So let's move on to the next news story. This is a very interesting one. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Dolphins have confirmed that they will be interviewing Brian Daboll for their head coach vacancy, obviously their head coaching position. I really like this. Obviously he has a history with Tua. He did a really good job of helping get that Bills offense on track and help develop and really find Josh Allen's rhythm and what he's really good at. I like the way he calls plays. I think one of the things that, and obviously he was in New England for some time, one of the things that he does well is he would bring in a unique scheme and a system that works. It worked in New England, it worked in Buffalo. He's learned from a lot of really good head coaches like Nick Saban, Bill Belichick. So he's got a really good pedigree, and I think his offensive mindedness, his pass with Tua, I like his offensive scheme. I think he would bring a lot of good things to the Dolphins. And he's coached for a long time, so he has a lot of experience as well. This would be his first stint as a head coach. But I think his because he's been in a lot of different places, I think he would be able to assemble a really good coaching staff. He's a younger guy. He's an offensive-minded guy. He would be inheriting a really good roster on defense with a lot of nice players. Obviously, he's got a few pieces on offense that he could work with as well. He's got a lot of cap space where he could kind of shape the offense. He knows what works with Tua. He could shape the offense and help Tua out in that direction, especially if we're going forward with Tua. I think this would be the right way to go. And right now, I think out of the other coaching candidates, I think this is the guy that I would like to see take over. Him and Eric Bieniemy, I think, would be good choices because, again, if we're going with Tua and Tua is the guy moving forward, I think those hires would help his development a lot. So hopefully the Dolphins can get that done and have some positive stuff going into the season because I think he has potential to be a really good head coach for all the reasons I stated. And, other names that are out there just to speculate, like Nathaniel Hackett, the Rams assistant coach O'Connor, those guys would be awful. Those guys don't bring anything unique. They just are the products of their environment. They just kind of stand around and win. That's what they do. They have nothing to do and do not affect the outcome on Sundays of their franchises. Brian Daboll really helped a unit that was struggling and a quarterback that was struggling turn it around. And that wasn't the case before he got there. That was the case after he got there. And that's one of the things that you have to look for in coaches. And Brian Daboll, I think that would be a fantastic move for the team and the franchise. This next news story is very interesting. This comes from Pro Football Rumors as well, and some other news. Not Pro Football Rumors. It comes from 24/7 Sports. Some Dolphins fan sites that I've seen it around where the Dolphins have been mentioned to be in the race to trade for Calvin Ridley. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. That's been some chatter out there. For that would be a fantastic move. Calvin Ridley is a fantastic route runner. He gets open really quickly, and he's really good after the catch. He's also an all-around player. He's worth a first-round pick in my mind because his ceiling is so high. I think the only issue with Calvin is he has some injuries. He has some injury history, but obviously he's played with Tua before. I think this would be a huge move for the Dolphins. And Calvin Ridley would help this team out a lot. It would be interesting to see if Brian Daboll came down here and he was able to get a deal like that done. Because, obviously they had that deal with Stephon Diggs in Buffalo. It would be kind of similar. Uh, so yeah, I think that's it for the news, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's it. There was one thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the fan Q&A, where we answered obviously answered Dolphins fans' questions. I wanted to talk about Tua because obviously he's an important piece of the equation when you think about the future of this team and the future of this franchise, and really just reviewing the year that he had. I think he had. I think the best way to describe it is there was inconsistencies. I think it was very up and down, especially these last few weeks. It's been very up and down. I think something that is clear that he has to work on is controlling the football, especially over the middle. He misses a lot of throws high over the middle, and that's something that he has to get better at. He loses control of the ball at times, and that leads to inaccurate throws, which leads to interceptions. I'm not really sure why, whether it's the weather conditions, whether it's whatever he's doing in his mechanics. I think he has the arm strength, but we've seen him lose control of the ball, and that's the biggest weakness of his game. Is just losing control of it on some of these throws over the middle of the field. We saw it a lot in the Tennessee game. He missed a lot of throws high. Obviously, the weather conditions weren't great there. We saw it some in the New England game. He missed a few throws. I mean, some of them bounced off. I mean, the perfect example of him missing over the middle, by the way, is when Devin McCourty it just fell into his chest, and it was kind of high and behind. He just has to get better at throwing over the middle of the football or middle of the field in tight windows, and that's something he's got to definitely work on. But his play was, definitely these last few games hasn't been great, and I don't know. It just kind of leaves you with a weird feeling going into the next season because he definitely these last two games, and I don't want to just take away from what he was able to do in the New England game. He made a few really nice plays. All right, I'm back. Just trying out these, you don't want these annoying sounds in the background. I'm sure it's already been pretty annoying. I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? We're talking about Tua. Yeah, it just these last couple games haven't been great. And I just wanted to talk about Tua. Like I said about the whole missing of the middle, I think that's the biggest weakness of his game. People want to bring about the deep ball. I think he's totally fine with that. It's just that intermediate stuff and tight man-to-man coverage where he kind of just loses control of the ball. He needs to do better of driving the ball on some of those throws. And hopefully that's something he works on in the offseason. I think it's the biggest weakness of his game. He has a lot of strengths. I don't think people point that out a lot. But they just don't articulate it the right way. They just kind of talk about his leadership and he's a great guy. Tua does have a lot of really good attributes on the field. His pocket presence is fantastic. He's got that's one of the biggest reasons we beat New England down the stretch of that game was his ability to kind of maneuver in the pocket and obviously scramble, but also find space to throw. His pocket presence is really nice. His ability to move defenders with his head has always been a really good attribute of his, and it's definitely translated to the NFL game. He's fantastic at it. His release is really nice. His accuracy, like I said, for the most part, is really good. It's just some throws and tight coverage over the middle, especially, he struggles with. And that's something he's going to have to get better at. And I think he just has to get better at driving the football on a more consistent basis. On some of those tighter throws. But he does have really nice attributes about his game. And I think he's been fantastic in a quick, fast-paced pass game. And I think someone like Brian Daboll could bring that to Miami. But overall, I think Tua's, especially last two games, weren't great. And I think the best way to kind of describe, he had a lot of high moments. He can make franchise-like throws. He did. He made a lot of really nice throws in the NFL so far in his NFL career, especially even this year. I mean, that deep corner out to Jalen Waddle was fantastic. That third down deep pass to Matt Collins where he had pressure in his face was a fantastic throw. So he's made throws like that. He just has to put it all together. And hopefully with an improvement on the offense and the talent, that can be done. So I'm still very optimistic about the future of him as a player. I think there is a version of his game that can be really good in this league, but he still has just really that one, and it's a big issue that he has to work on to take that next step to be a franchise quarterback in the future of this team. For Dolphins fans to kind of feel comfortable with that. So I just want to talk about Tua because, that's something he's definitely going to have to work on. And again, Brian Daboll, an offensive guy, really good at developing quarterbacks, can really look at the strengths and weaknesses of his game and I think help him out with that a lot. Not like these fake guys like Charlie. All we heard about is Charlie Fry this entire year, and what has he really done to help Tua's game? I couldn't tell you, to be honest with you. I will say this about Tua: he did make a jump from year 2 to year 1, or year 1 to year 2. Excuse me. He looked more confident. Definitely, the game wasn't too much for him. He didn't look overwhelmed. I think he looked bigger this year. There was a lot of things that his comfortability, I think, was the biggest thing this year in the game, and definitely played with more confidence and looked like he knew what he was doing out there. Because last year there was a few times where it was like, it just didn't look great, and I think he definitely took a nice step this year. So yeah, that's really all I had to say about Tua, because I feel like I always kind of praise Tua and make I wouldn't say excuses, but point out the deficiencies around him. But he definitely has things he has to work on in his game for sure. So let's move on to the fan Q&A. Dude, I can't believe, I'm telling you something right now, guys. This news is like, it's just crazy, dude. It's like something out of a nightmare. It really is. The fact that Chris Greer didn't get fired and Brian Flores did is bananas. But what can you expect from a franchise like, dude? Stephen Ross, dude. I just don't understand. He really, really is clueless. The dude's clueless is the best way to describe it. So let's get into the fan Q&A, where we answer fans' questions. This first question comes from Beef. He says, "Hey Skaggs, there's been a lot of talk around Chris Greer throughout the season, concerning over the decisions he's made about picking players. Greer is on the hot seat for sure, probably is well aware of it. My question do you think he'll do a better job this offseason at evaluating players, not just for draft picks, but for free agents as well? Or do you think Greer has become a liability for the Fins?" He's definitely become a liability, especially with his snake in the grass antics and him getting Chris Greer, Brian Flores booted out. The fact that the biggest reason is because those two couldn't collaborate. Now we haven't heard him, and Tua's name was brought up, and one of the, the relationship obviously wasn't very good. I could definitely believe that, but what Stephen Ross brought up in his press conference, the biggest reason for it was a collaborative thing, and the fact that the reason he picked Greer over Flores just blows my mind. But what you're asking me is has Chris Greer become a liability? Yes, he's become even a bigger problem than he was before, because now he has more power in this organization than I think anybody ever thought he had. The fact that whoever wants to take this job is going to have to walk on eggshells with Chris Greer is ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, how much of a collaborative effort is it if one guy disagrees? I mean, apparently it was over the quarterback situation, and I guess whoever is hired here is going to have to be on board with that, and Chris Greer. I just really wish Chris was fired. So to answer your question, Beef, yes, he's a liability. Do I trust? I think one thing that was interesting in that press conference when you're talking about free agents, in your question, Beef, is that Stephen Ross brought up the cap space and how the cap space is in a good place and how we have a ton of cap space. And obviously the draft that he just had really helped his ability to kind of, I guess, convince Stephen Ross that he should be kept. Those were all factors, but I think him even mentioning the cap space, I think they're going to be aggressive in free agency. Because the message, at least from those two, have been the last 3 years have been, we want to build it through the draft and stuff. So for him to bring up the cap space thing, I could see, and especially with all the holes we have on the offense, I definitely could see us being more aggressive. But to answer your question, Beef, yes, he's become more of a liability than people could even I can't believe Chris Greer somehow got out of this with zero accountability. This next question comes from TR3MC. He says, "Was the firing of Flores justified with all that he's accomplished so far? And do you think it's a bad or good decision overall for the Miami Dolphins?" I think it's an awful decision, TR3. For many different reasons that we've already talked about. He was fired over politics. He wasn't fired because of his results on the football field. That was made clear in Stephen Ross's press conference, because he couldn't say anything about the results on the field. I mean, what is he going to say? It's like, oh, it sucks to win 2 years in a row. And it sucks because Brian, I think despite, obviously we won one less game than we did a year ago, but I think he was getting better at it. It just, it sucks that he didn't get another year. But to answer your question, yes, it's an awful decision. For mainly, and one of the main reasons it's an awful decision is just how this franchise was ran and how I guess Stephen Ross wants it to be ran. Like the whole disagreeing thing on I don't know. I could talk about this all day. But yes, it was a very bad decision. This next question comes from Maurice Williams. He says, what are your thoughts on Tua and Justin Herbert's mirror seasons? Tua didn't throw for big numbers, but had a great defense for most of the way, and Herbert did have the big numbers, but missed the playoffs with the lack of a great defense. Do you think Tua just had to middle of the packet for us to contend, or we need Herbert-like numbers for us to contend with the Giants of the AFC? What are your thoughts? I don't think you need Herbert to contend in the AFC. I think that... Hold on. Dogs are going crazy again. I think that... I'm losing my train of thought because these are dogs. You don't need gaudy numbers, no. You need a competent offense. I think the offensive talent level was just too low to compete with the better teams in our conference. They just every time we played a good team that had a good defense, they just overwhelmed us on offense, and you just can't compete that way. I mean, if you look at the Titans game, really the defense only gave up 21 points, but if you could have put pressure on the Titans offense, I think we win that game. So the reason why we couldn't contend with the higher guys is just we were just overwhelmed on the offensive side of the football from a talent standpoint. And I think that just has to improve. But no, Tua doesn't need to have 50, 40 touchdowns, 35 touchdowns for us to contend in the AFC, no. This next question comes from Bad Bandit. He says, hey, Skaggs, I'm sure you've already talked about B-Flow getting fired. I just want to know if you are worried about this decision. I can't help feeling this will end up like the Lions when they fired Jim Caldwell. I don't think I can handle watching this team regress yet again. I agree with you, Bad Bandit. The thing I can't handle is when B-Flow goes somewhere else, when he has success. That's going to suck to see. Hopefully he doesn't go to the AFC. Hopefully he goes to the NFC. This next question comes from Jackpack18. He says, hey, Skaggs, I know you're probably suicidal over the Flores firing, but I'm here to walk you back from the edge. If you took a look at it coldly and rationally, this was the right move. First, he was unable to fix the offense. They averaged like 17 points per game this year. That's absolutely pathetic. He fired his best offensive coach last year when he got rid of Chan after they convinced him to come out of retirement, which is ludicrous when you think about it. Second, he didn't change the culture. When they absolutely needed to win a game to make the playoffs, they failed 2 years in a row. Just like Joe Philbin, yes, they had back-to-back winning seasons, but they needed an extra game to do it. He never came close to beating the Bills. Lastly, he was kind of a jerk. He forced Minka out of here in year one and fired Van Noy because he stuck up for people on the defense, not to mention the way he treated Tua. Well, I think that was probably his biggest mistake is the way he dealt with the quarterback situation. To me, that was the biggest mistake of his career with the Dolphins. That was too much of a distraction, and definitely could have been handled better by the owner and the GM, by the way. Not just him, but that was probably the biggest kind of the thing that he kind of messed up on the most. But again, this whole thing about him in this offensive coaches, I mentioned earlier in the show, all of those had justifiable reasons to get rid of them. I cannot believe people are going to sit, Dolphins fans especially, are going to sit here and defend Chan Gailey. Clearly, he wasn't good for the development of Tua. We saw that his first year with Tua. I mean, it's very clear on that. He made the game way overly simple. Everything he did with Tua was obviously not good for his development. Chad O'Shea was fired because, like I said earlier, the players in the locker room didn't like him. George Godsey, I think, was going in the right direction. I thought he did a good job of working with what he had and making something out of it. And really turning that offense around and really kind of getting that run game going towards the end of the year. So I don't blame that on Brian Flores at all. I think he was justified in all of those decisions he made, and I don't second guess them at all. And in terms of the culture, I completely disagree with that. I think the culture was vastly different than what it was with Philbin and Gase. I mean, that was reported league-wide, from national media sources to insider sources, where there was just more respect for the way the organization was being ran. Multiple people said it's the best it's been ran in a long time. And Brian Flores commanded a lot of respect around the league from his players and his peers. So I completely disagree with the culture thing. I didn't think he was a jerk at all. I thought he was awesome. I think he was kind of like a Rocky figure. He was a fighter. You know what I mean? He brought that kind of gritty mentality where he worked hard. He did whatever it took to win. He had the backs of his players. I mean, the Bengals game is a perfect example of that, where he tried to fight Zach Taylor in the middle of the field. I mean, that was amazing. Like, I completely disagree with that. So I disagree with you on Brian Flores. Clearly, you're not as big a fan of Sim Jag Pack. I think it was clearly the wrong decision for multiple reasons. Chris Grier should have been the one to get fired, not Brian Flores. The reasons his offense hasn't been as good is because Chris Grier can't pick offensive linemen, and made some bad decisions on receivers as well. That's on Chris Grier, not Brian Flores. Chris Grier has to have some accountability. This next question comes from Beef. He says, "Hey Skaggs, I need to vent about the firing of Coach Brian Flores. Maybe one of the worst decisions made in the Miami Dolphins organization. Did you think Flores was scapegoated? What did you think about Ross still keeping Grier if he's still here?" I don't know I don't think he was scapegoated. Until what? Why is he scapegoated? There was no reason. There was literally no reason to fire Brian. If they weren't getting along, then fire Chris Grier. That should have been an easy decision to make. Let Brian go out and find someone that he can collaborate with, and instead of the other way around. I would rather have that happen than Chris Grier getting that privilege to do that. He didn't earn it. He didn't deserve it, but Brian did, and it sucks. So yeah, I thought it was an awful. I don't think he was scapegoat. That's the weird thing about it. It was like there was zero reason to fire Brian Flores, in my opinion. Now, if you're looking at it from Stephen Ross, where you believe in Tua, I guess maybe if that relationship was so bad that they couldn't be in the same building together, and if Chris Grier wants to go along with Tua, then I guess this makes sense. But that's not a good reason to fire Brian Flores. I think if I asked every Dolphins fan around the world who would you rather have, Tua or Brian Flores, they all would pick Brian Flores. So again, just another bad decision by the owner who just didn't know what he had. He really didn't know what he had. This next question comes from Daniel. This is, what are your top reasons as to why Flo was fired? Who would you replace him with? I think politics was the number one reason. Clearly, he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way that had Stephen Ross's ear, and that's why he was fired, unfortunately. Who I would replace him with, I think Dayball is the one I'm kind of warming up to the most. I think it just makes a lot of sense. The Tua connection, he's an offensive-minded coach. He brings a unique scheme that's a successful one. And was a really big reason of why that Bills offense got turned around and really helped Josh Allen's career. So I'm going to go with Dayball. And he's been around a lot of really good head coaches like Brian was. I mean, he coached under Bill for a lot of years, Brian did. And obviously, Dayball has been around Saban and Bill. And even Sean McDermott, who's a good head coach. So he's got a lot of football knowledge as well. So I'm leaning towards a Dayball. This next question comes from Mark Jefferson. He says, well, Skaggs, they fired Flores. They are keeping Grier, so what does that mean for Tua? FYI, the owner still said he will not pursue Harbaugh. So why would you fire Flores? Was this the right move? No, this move makes no sense. It really doesn't. It's almost like someone cast a spell on Stephen Ross and he just made this decision. It just doesn't make any sense. I just don't know why you would fire a coach that has done what he's done in 3 years. And this is a guy in Stephen Ross who said, we're going to do it the right way. We're not going to do this patchwork thing that we've done over the years in free agency. We're going to build it through the draft. He even told the fans to be patient. And every beat writer and every national media source, everybody around this team thought this was a 4-year rebuild, 4 to 5 year rebuild, and he didn't get the opportunity to see it through. And he accomplished a lot of great things in the two years he actually had an opportunity to win in. And by the way, nobody thought that this team would sniff 10 wins his second year. And he did it. And yes, this year wasn't what we thought it would be. But maybe it should have been this. I mean, obviously the offense was injured and wasn't very talented. But I think what he was able to accomplish in his first 3 years, nobody thought he was going to be able to do what he did. And I just don't understand it. I really don't. And it sucks we'll never see that scheme and that blitz ever again. It was so fun to watch. And, again, shout out to Coach Flo for creating a lot of great memories and a lot of great wins. Beat a lot of good teams, and winning New England was amazing. Like, all those things that he did. A lot of great moments under Coach Flo. So, again, thanks, Coach, for that. And thanks, Coach, for making a tough, gritty team that was fun to watch and had an identity, had a great defensive identity. And again, he had a really fun scheme to watch as well. This next question comes from Beef. He says, "Hey, Skaggs, do you believe Ross screwed the Dolphins organization and the fans by firing Flores?" Yes, I do. Because, again, like he really didn't know what he had, and that's unfortunate. Because he should have chose Flo over Tua, and he should have chose Flo over Chris. He just didn't know what he had. I mean, I really don't. I just don't get it. This next question comes from Richard. He says, "What about the Dolphins hiring Doug Peterson for head coaching jobs, or Bills offense coordinator Brian Daboll? He was the offensive coordinator in 2010 when Chad Henne was the quarterback. And I heard a rumor the Dolphins are thinking about trading for Falcons receiver Calvin Ridley." Yeah, the Calvin Ridley thing would be fantastic. To answer your question about Doug Peterson, I think he would be he's the one who really kind of popularized the RPO. I like the way he built his teams, really good up front, ran the football. So, yeah, I could see that being a fit with Tua as well. Obviously won a Super Bowl, a lot of coaching experience, was a backup quarterback for a long time. So, yeah, I like Doug Peterson a lot. And he's a veteran coach, too, which would help. And I like Daboll. I've already talked about Daboll enough on the pod. So, yeah, those two would be great. This next question comes from Collins. He says, "Hey, Skaggs, what did you think about the Dolphins, firing Coach Flo?" I was sick when I heard the news. Like, I couldn't believe it. This next question comes from JackPack18. He says, "No, you're going to disagree or make excuses, but Tua has not looked great since the second Jets game. His ball security in the Titans game was an issue. He's missing guys running free as well. I like Tua. He's scrappy, a decent scrambler, and he's going to put the work in he needs to be successful. I just don't think he'll be good in the AFC East, where you need to play outdoor games in the rain, cold, and wind." I disagree with people being open. I do agree, though, that his play, especially over the last 2 weeks of the year, was not great. And yeah, I can see what you said, what you mean by his play kind of went down since the Jets game. I can't remember the order of those games, but I definitely agree the last 2 weeks, his play has been not great. So definitely don't want to make excuses. He's missed some open people. I don't know about running free, but he's definitely missed some throws that he should hit, and we've seen him hit the last 2 weeks. He's made some bad decisions. He made a bad decision against the Saints. So, he hasn't played his best the last few weeks. But the Jets game, there was really no one there for him. Remember, Waddle missed that game. And outside of Waddle, it's been a struggle to find consistency with some of those other offensive players. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. It sucks. It sucks. Like I said, Coach Flo not only had the respect of his players, but his peers. and achieved a lot of things that a lot of coaches that have come through this organization in the last few years couldn't even come close to doing. And you got to remember, he beat Bill in Gillette with Tom Brady, with a vastly inferior roster at the time. He did that, so not a lot of people can say that even coach right now. So it sucks, Brian. I haven't seen Bill Belichick stop a Dolphins head coach and shake his hand and say and literally take the time to say good job. Like, I haven't seen that with any of those coaches. So, like I said, he had the respect of his peers. He had a lot of respect around the league. And I just love the mentality he brought to the franchise, and the way he shaped the team and the personality that he brought to the team was awesome to watch. It was a great joy to watch. And like I said, a lot of great moments. So thanks to Coach Flo for that. And it sucks we're not going to see that in year 4. With hopefully, we had a lot of momentum going into the off. And again, I didn't even talk about the win on Sunday, because again, it just feels weird to talk about after the news on Monday. So anyway, that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed it. One of probably the worst, most down I've felt on the franchise since I've covered the team. The Brock Osweiler years, the after 2016, the Gase years were really, really tough to get through. And this news matches that feeling and more, for sure. Those were directionless. I can't even say the word. Teams that really didn't have a path to success, and this feels kind of like that, where it's like, what is the direction of the team? Because there really isn't one, and it's not winning. And again, Stephen Ross wants to sit here and bring up collaborative efforts. Just look at the history of the league. Study the game. Look at all the successful organizations. They did not do this with this mass turnover in the organizations. They definitely didn't fire coaches that won. It sucks. It really, really does. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Sorry, guys. Before I go, I forgot to answer this question. I thought this was a very interesting question. So I just want to answer this question really quick because I thought it was important, especially for the video, the last, really kind of wrapping up the season. This last question comes from Beef. He says, "Hey Skeggs, how about them Dolphins? Happy to see the Dolphins in the season on a positive note. Even though we didn't make the playoffs, I remember mentioning in the second time we played against Buffalo, this team has more to show, and they shouldn't just let everyone walk over them." Sorry about the pugs in the background. Well, they definitely showed up and had more heart than most fans thought they had, which made me so proud of them. Not going to disqualify their hard work and over who they won against. My question is, who do you think should stay and who do you think should leave, and what position should we try to get in the offseason? Jesse Davis has to go, self-explanatory, and do you think we should get new coaching personnel as well? This was obviously before Brian Flores was fired, so obviously we're going to have new coaching personnel on the offensive side of the football. But I wanted to bring up the fact that, people like Emmanuel Ogbah and Elandon Roberts, I really hope will come back. I hope they don't leave because of the Brian Flores firing. I think those two are pretty key pieces. I think Elandon Roberts is severely underrated. I love how Emmanuel Ogbah plays the game. He's a really good all-around defensive player. So I just wanted to bring that up before I ended the video. I also think Duke Johnson should come back. I think he has really surprised a lot of people and how good he is at running the ball, especially in between the tackles. I don't think a lot of people thought he can do it that well. And he can really affect the passing game too. I think he has a lot to offer just to be an all-around, yards from scrimmage guy that can be a really, 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 really important and great weapon for this offense for years to come. So shout out to Duke Johnson, who just played his heart and soul out in that New England win, and has really helped make over the offense. In terms of people outside of the building that I would love to see become Dolphins in free agency, Jacoby Myers would be a fantastic signing. I just love his game. I think he would fit Tua's game perfectly, and especially if Brian Daboll came down here, would be a perfect fit in that offense. He basically would be playing in the same offense. And I would say, secondly, I would love to see the Calvin Ridley trade happen. I think that would be a game changer for Tua's career and the offense moving forward, and he would be a great Dolphin for years to come. I mean, he's still really young, has a high ceiling, and adding another superstar like that would just be just amazing to watch on Sunday. So those are kind of my final thoughts on who to kind of keep. Obviously, Mike Gesicki's a free agent, and he's developing in the right direction. Devontae Parker, it's kind of a take it or leave it for me. I really don't have a stake in either way. It's whatever the Dolphins decide to do. If he comes back, I just don't think he's very reliable. I think this entire receiver core needs to be revamped. I think the only one you keep is Waddle and Gesicki, and then you kind of build off of that. I don't really think I don't really need anybody else to come back. So that's just my final thoughts. Obviously, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think about Coach Flo and his 3 short years here. Think about Tua, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm sure we're gonna have a ton to talk about on the next one for sure, and hopefully we'll get some clarity on the head coaching search.